But there is hope. Reach out to someone, connect with your friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope. Furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Hi, I'm Brett Barry, the host of Soundbeat. Every episode features a recording from Belfer Audio Archive, one of the largest sound archives in the country. We add in a related storyline, whether it be about the performers, the songs, or something else entirely. From vaudeville to vinyl, you'll hear it all on Soundbeat. Soundbeat is produced at the Belfer Audio Archive, Syracuse University Libraries.
KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Eleven minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Monday morning, June the 1st. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Micklin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE, 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, 103.3 FM over the air in the Durango, Colorado area, and of course streaming everywhere from our website, ksje.com. Welcome also to our visual radio viewers this morning watching the program live on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. Coming up on the program in the next few moments, Farmington Police Chief Steve Hebbe is here to talk with me about what's been going on around the country these past few days and the issue of police activity and police brutality and some of the other issues that are going on. We'll be talking with him in just a few moments right here, so we're glad that you are with us today. Later on this hour, we'll also talk technology with my guest Lewis Campbell from Synergy Computer Systems here in Farmington. That you will be hearing at 8:50 a.m. on KSJE this morning. Then at 9 a.m., we split off a little bit. At 9 o'clock, it's our local information program about the coronavirus, COVID-19. Megan Cullip is my co-host, and she'll be here, and we'll be joined by Jeff Bourgeois, the CEO of San Juan Regional Medical Center, to get an update on conditions there. And also Jamie Church will be talking with us, too, about the reopening today of many local and small businesses on the governor's new public health order. So join us for that, streaming live on YouTube and Facebook this morning at 9 a.m., a rebroadcast on the radio every afternoon at 5:06 p.m. right here on KSJE. On the radio at 9, Mick Hess is here, roving with the arts, and today Mick is playing music from the great Aaron Copland. You'll hear that today on the radio at 9 a.m. on KSJE. In addition to Facebook and YouTube, don't forget about our Twitter feed and our Instagram account as well. Maybe some more scattered showers this afternoon. We're expecting a partly sunny day today in Farmington, the high 86 in San Juan County, 58 with some more scattered showers expected overnight tonight. Partly sunny skies tomorrow and warmer with a high of 91 on Tuesday. Sunshine and 91 on Wednesday, and sunny and even hotter on Thursday with a high of 94 before another chance of scattered showers moves in Thursday night on into Friday and Saturday with highs of 93 and 81. That's what's coming up this morning. Let me turn to my guest who is here with me this morning in the studio. Farmington Police Chief Stephen Hebbe is here. Chief, good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Scott. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you, and I appreciate you being here to talk a little bit about what has been going on. You made a post last week, I know, after this incident in Minneapolis, and so, of course, we've seen just more and more incidents of violence and protests and counter-protests all across the country, even in the nation's capital. And I know you've been watching it, and you're concerned about it.
Very astute, yes, sir.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. Who's not?
That's right. Who's not? These are. This was a surreal weekend.
It was
for us.
Yeah,
across the country, when you're seeing the White House and the Secret Service actually getting engaged with protesters, which isn't something that happens very frequently.
Well, and the president apparently moved to a bunker in the White House. So anyways, yes,
definitely surreal days. But back to the original event that kind of touched everything off was the killing of George Floyd in the course of an arrest by a Minneapolis police officer, a former Minneapolis police officer. That was something that I felt like we've seen happen through the years, the 6 years even that I've been chief here. But of course it predated that. And I just felt I needed to come out and say something stronger about how we as chiefs see that. And I think even over the weekend you saw the head of the Minnesota Police Chiefs Association came out, and he said, there was strong support for the Minneapolis PD making the decision to fire, and then for the eventually charges to be brought. So I think you're seeing more of that, although mine was a little earlier in this area. But more chiefs, I think, speaking out, saying this is not the way we do business. This is not how our agency acts. Obviously, it wasn't how Minneapolis PD was supposed to be acting, because they got rid of those officers fast. So I wanted to do something public that talked about it and recognized the fact that we have been going through a reform period in law enforcement over the last decade, really. But the last 6 years here in Farmington, we have made a number of changes specifically related to use of force. And so what you saw in that video would not be permissible here. I'm not saying that it can't happen, because bad stuff can happen, but they would not survive working with our police agency.
Right. And we were talking before we came on the air this morning, Chief, a little bit about that incident. And I know one of your bigger concerns, too, was the other officers who were at the scene not apparently doing anything to stop this thing from how it ultimately ended with Mr. Floyd's death after about 8-9 minutes.
I think that's it certainly would be if I was the chief, and I'm not speaking for the Minneapolis police chief, but when you have multiple officers there, at least one of them take a break. Get the guy away from him, get him off the neck. But for none of the four to take any action, I think that's why they're talking about possible charges on all four. We'll see what comes of that. Right now, it's the one officer. But from a police chief perspective, and looking at what is the culture of your agency, the concerning thing would be multiple officers present and nobody intervening and doing something different. So
against any type of policy anywhere, right? I mean, this type of action, I can't imagine any agency would say this is how you subdue a suspect.
Right. I can't say that. And frankly, he was subdued. I mean,
he wasn't going anywhere.
No. Yeah. He's handcuffed. They've got him on his stomach. Now it's never that easy to then control somebody. You're going to push them down some, obviously, if you've got them on the ground. But I've never seen one, and I've been in the business now 30 years. I've never done anything like kneel on somebody's neck for 8 minutes while they're handcuffed, laying on their stomach, especially when you have multiple officers there. Then you shouldn't need to use as much force when you have multiple officers present, because each of them can help control. But then to just sit there on it, there's no excuse for it. There's no policy I've ever seen that would support that.
Right. And so, again, a quick dismissal of all these officers from the force, and some folks watching would say, why so? I mean, this happened very quickly, and usually there's an internal investigation and internal affairs is involved, and is it just so apparently heinous that you can do that and quickly dismiss these folks? And again, we can't speak for the department because we're not there. But my question: if it happened here, so you have done this. You have dismissed an officer.
I have
quickly,
and I haven't had it like this. So I'm not sure what the policy violations were for the department. It would depend on what the officer's statements were. If there was the department felt there was some cover up, obviously, they're going to move very quickly to get rid of people. Under those circumstances, we have moved quickly here. Unfortunately, when we've had those, and they are unfortunate. It's difficult to do, but when it's something so egregious like that, and we've had a couple of incidents here, you have to do it. You have to get rid of folks who are not suited for the profession. And so there is an internal affairs investigation, and it depends on how complex these things are. Employees have rights. Employees of police departments and in every profession have rights. And so part of it is we're going to do an investigation. We're not just going to get rid of you because it feels good to do it at the moment. But you can move pretty quick, and the more video you have, and here at Farmington we have both body cam and in-car video, So we were one of the first agencies to have that, had it really before I started here, and we just upgraded our system last August, a $1.4 million upgrade to our body cam system. So you get a lot of information from the officer himself, and then from other officers that are around it, and now with cell phones and everything else that we see, you can get a lot of information quickly.
Right. And that's been, I think, some of the concerns from folks around the country with some of these protests about why does this keep happening? And we're only maybe aware of it because we have these cameras that are documenting it. If there aren't the body cams or the dash cams or things along that line, and so the concern is that this may be happening more frequently, and for this community, the African American community across the country, this is why we're seeing the demonstrations, the protests, the anger against this status quo that needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think that all the way back to the Rodney King incident, you saw the impact of video on police and what it shows, and now with whether the department itself has video, frequently there's citizens around with cell phones and they have video, and so you've seen a number of these things. What I would tell you is that's why we like the video that we have our officers on most of the time, and by most I mean overwhelming amount of the time. It shows what our officers are doing, shows our officers doing a great job, shows them being polite, shows them being reasonable and professional in the face of hostility and in difficult or stressful or dangerous circumstances. And so, for the most part, I stand behind our officers because of the video we have. But sometimes the video shows people who should not be in the business anymore, or it just shows routine violations of policy, and it's something that we can get on and deal with at a lower level. But from the nation's perspective about what are we getting from law enforcement, there's a sense that you can't trust us if you don't have a video on us, and I get that.
Right. And that's a concern.
Well, that's a concern for us. It's a concern, I think, for law enforcement leaders and for police officers across the country. The days of just accepting our word for things, those days are long gone. Now, if it isn't on video, it didn't happen, and so that definitely makes it more challenging to police these days.
And I think we've seen here that there has been times when the department has released its video, body cam or dash cam video, maybe in response to a concern in the community about something about this call didn't go according to procedure or what have you. And as you said, it shows kind of the officer doing everything that they are supposed to do, and you've quickly released the video to prove that, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, in particular in officer-involved shootings, I think the public deserves to know it as fast as possible. Now, we've worked with the state police before, and so we try not to taint the investigation. We let interviews happen, and then the video goes out and people can see it, so that there's no way you can say the officer has seen the video and now he's reacting to that, or any of the witnesses. But we do try and get those out. We generally do within 3 or 4 days of the incident, and we also try not to overuse that. So, you can use it where we've got lots of great video of our employees doing great things. But to just keep sending that out to the public, like, look how great we are, look how great we are, it kind of belies that sometimes that we're not doing a great job. And so, in some of the shootings, I think there's still some controversy over 1 or 2 of them, although I think there's when we've released those videos, there's been general acknowledgement that, it wasn't good circumstances, the officer did the best he could. There weren't a lot of better options. So that is a tool for us, and it is one that generally for our officers and for our department and our community, it's been a good thing.
Right.
We can release that.
And of course, at those moments, right, it's a split-second decision that your officers are having to make, and it falls back, I imagine, on their training, and that's why all the focus on training, the use of force policies, and the training that your officers get. And again, you talked about the investment in body cameras and systems and things like that. We have to remember not every police department is as well equipped as Farmington PD, to which I think we should be grateful.
Yeah, you're right on that, no doubt about it. But so it also goes to not just the training, who you hire. We spend a lot of time on who we hire, and we're looking for people with good hearts, people that want to help people, and that wasn't something I think law enforcement focused on 10 or 15 years ago. But now the quality of the person, we can train the skills, but who you are matters to us more than what you can do. So the days of the 6'2", everybody had to be a 6'2" police officer, those days are long gone. We can train you to be a police officer, but we can't train you to care about people. You've got to be a decent person. You've got to want to help people. So that it starts there. Then the policies that we have, and we've gone through over the last several years some serious revisions of our use of force policies. We had a public forum about that even down at the and I'm not sure if you were the moderator for it.
I think I might have been. That's right.
You might have been.
When we used to be able to get together with crowds of people to talk about these things.
Yeah, that's right. So it wasn't overwhilingly well attended. Unfortunately, I was a little disappointed. We had an outside expert that had come in and worked with us to revise our policies. So then you hire good people, you have good policies, then your training is good. And we do train. We train to de-escalate. We train to work with folks that are in mental crisis. And then on the back end of it, we have our use of force team that we just started 2 years ago. And we talked about that on this radio show and on our cop shop, where we have 2 sergeants who do nothing but review every use of force that's done in the Farmington Police Department. So even on the SRO incident that we had last fall, which was out of policy, it was inappropriate. And we fired the officer for it, or the officer resigned in lieu of it.
Let me just bring the public up to speed on what we're talking about if they don't remember.
Sure.
But this is the incident with the school resource officer at one of the Farmington schools with a student who had been having some problems that day and was on her way out the door, and there were issues when she got outside. School officials, we could see kind of surrounding them, a little disappointed or concerned about what was going on.
Yes.
And that's kind of what happened. There was a bit of a physical altercation.
Yes. That was another one that, you described. We did release the video on that.
Body
so
camera,
could
right.
see what was going on it. But so that use of force in that instance.
And didn't make the department look good.
Didn't make us look
frankly,
good. Did not make us
in that video, but you released it anyway.
Yes. Because the public had a right to know.
Yeah, and got a lot of pushback from worldwide, I think.
We took a beating worldwide.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It was, which is a little disappointing. We're showing it to everyone. Of course we know of it, and of course we object to it, and of course we got rid of the employee involved in it. But that one was discovered because of our use of force team. That looks at every one of our uses of force. So when it came up to them, they looked at it, we knew we had a problem right away, and we started taking action right away when we saw that. So, that is a new team. Most departments our size do not have those kind of resources devoted to use of force reviews, but we do. We do partially because we do have the body camera and the in-car video, so we have a lot of information for us to review. And while we go through those reviews, overwhelmingly our use of force is very low level here in Farmington, and it's appropriate. But in those instances where it's not, we get back, we either do training or we do discipline. In the case of the SRO, ultimately he's no longer with us.
Right. And in this incident, too, you pointed out to me before we came on the air this morning that when the other officers arrived on scene, they realized right away that whatever was going on was not following policy, and were able to step in to a certain degree to correct that.
And kind of de-escalate things. And so back to what we were talking about with the multiple officers on scene and how they act. Here, when the second 2 officers arrived, and it was Officer Reyes Flores and Officer Ben Jemmett, when they arrived, you could just feel the tension kind of de-escalated. They went into the de-escalation training that we used. They were dealing with somebody who was in crisis. The girl clearly was in crisis, clearly was very upset, and they talk her through it. And as you watch that was excellent. That's exactly what we want our officers to do. So you didn't see the compounding effect of, and that's the culture of the agency. When one's making a mistake, the others don't dive in and either defend it or do the same thing.
Right.
And that's when you're making some success. You're having some progress when your department isn't all rallying around the same conduct by the officer. So we were pleased with that.
Sure. Let me ask you a bit about working with persons of color, minority groups. You've done this throughout your career, whether it's been in Minnesota or up in Alaska or here in Farmington, and reached out to these groups. Again, as I mentioned before, here we are. I'm a white guy talking about this, but I can imagine what some of these groups are feeling when they see this violence against people that look like them all across the country and happening decade after decade now, over and over again. And so how important is it to reach out to some of these groups in your community to understand what they're feeling, what their concerns are with the police when they have an encounter, and if those are real or unreal, but they're still valid, and that's where their perception is coming from?
Yeah. You know, so we have done that. The whole time I've been here, we've had a sustained outreach to the Navajo Nation. 20 to 22% of our population here in Farmington is Navajo. We've had a sustained outreach to the immigrant community. Again, we're about 20 to 22% is Hispanic. Many of those have associations with the immigrant community. We also have significant outreach to the LGBTQ community. All of those communities at various times have had their feelings of disassociation, whether nationally or even locally here, where they did not feel like the department was one that was accessible to them. So I really have pushed a mantra of we are everybody's police department, and I do believe that. After almost 30 years in the business, whatever is going on, people have to believe the police are neutral and will be there to help them. And we will be, and that is not just my personal vow. That is our motto at the department. Your department, our community. So you have to listen to people. Now, sometimes those conversations are not productive and don't make you feel good about yourself or the things that you're doing, because there is a lot of anger and there's a lot of sometimes misunderstandings, sometimes just outright misconduct by your department through time, or poor decisions that I've made, and those can be unpleasant conversations, but you have to have that dialogue, and every time we've come away better and closer with the communities that we're engaged with. That is something that I've spent a fair amount of time talking about during my time as chief here with people not in those communities. That there isn't a wide appreciation that some folks, we don't have a large African American population here, but we certainly do in these other groups. I even did some outreach to the Muslim community, because we have a small Muslim community here. And there wasn't a lot of understanding from some as to why we would do that. Well, the police are neutral. Everybody has to feel safe with us, or they're not going to report stuff. Or there's going to be just this, what you're seeing across the country. There's going to be a lot of hostility under their breath and behind the scenes, and something will go wrong, like we saw in Ferguson and now we see in Minneapolis, and then things explode. So I'm very hopeful here that we have had those dialogues with those communities, and that if there is issues or problems, they know they can talk with us. And we won't always agree, but we usually arrive at a much better place where everybody feels heard.
Right. And so let's talk about what's going on maybe here. We've seen a couple of protests, not about this incident, but about public health orders and things along that line. Mm-hmm. And that's caused some back and forth a little bit from social media, of course, from folks who were in favor of it, folks that weren't in favor of it. There's word of maybe a gathering about this particular incident from Minneapolis, supporting the African American community and what they've been going through over the decades. And so, I would hope that it could be a peaceful gathering. And again, First Amendment rights, everybody has them, so they're welcome to do that. And if someone disagrees, I guess they're welcome to do that too. But you're a bit concerned about some of this, because obviously we're seeing, even in Albuquerque, you only have to go 200 miles away to see sometimes these things turn violent. And it's hard to say who's doing it, who's behind that.
Yes, it is. And to an extent, that's not even the first concern, right? The first concern is we don't want innocent citizens or police officers being hurt or killed as a result of these. So I am worried about the protests in general across our country. We do have one tonight. We're hopeful that it's going to go well, but we're nervous. And there's another one, I think, scheduled for Friday, is what I've seen. We don't know a lot about the groups that are behind them. But we are doing some outreach over the weekend. We talked with a couple of people that were engaged in planning the event and trying to get people to come to it. So back to the public health order protests. You saw some criticism of the mayor. You even saw some criticism of the Farmington PD. And I wasn't always very happy about it, because it just represents a fundamental lack of understanding of the role of law enforcement and when citizens have a grievance with the government. So in the two protests against the public health order, there was some banter about they should have been required to have a permit. And of course, then if they were required to have a permit, then you could say no. We could reject the permit, and then they couldn't have a protest. So honestly, from the very fundamental level of, does the government really have the right to tell you can't protest the government? Absolutely not. So I was shocked at that notion that and of course now the other side's protesting, and now there's no talk of permits, and everybody understands, geez, you get to protest the government when you're not happy with it. So to an extent, our country's so divided right now that if you're not agreeing with what I'm saying, I don't want to hear you say it. And so the notion of using permits to somehow silence one group or the other, there isn't permits. I'm not aware of any permit applications for tonight's protest. They don't need a permit unless they're on public property or they're going to block streets or something like that. If they're just standing there on the sidewalk with their say, they get to do that.
And that's, I guess, an important distinction, because I think some folks were concerned when they would have a protest or an activity or group gathering downtown in maybe Orchard Plaza, a public park,
right?
That is a different situation.
That's a different situation,
and that a permit would be required.
Yes,
from what you're saying.
Now, sometimes at the museum, we've had some of those, and permits are required. Museum city property,
right? But at the mall, where these things have now happened, and I guess we can't say, we don't know if the mall has approved these or not approved these, but it's private property.
Yes. Well, and the sidewalks, I think, is where the majority of people are standing. So maybe they're parking in the mall parking lot. Maybe they have permission to do that. But when they're standing on the sidewalk, as long as they're not blocking the sidewalk and people can still access it, they're good to go. And
I see.
I think that's what will be the case tonight too. So in general, I absolutely support either tonight or over the last 2 weeks people's right to protest. Now, FPD has done some outreach. Like I said, this weekend we'll continue to do some outreach with whoever will talk with us about tonight's protest, and we'll have a presence there. We'll make sure that people that are protesting are safe from anything happening to them, and we'll make sure that nothing gets out of line. And we've had some online chat of maybe people from outside the area coming in, and maybe they would be interested in agitating. Some of that is talk, some of that's social media. At its core, people want to make a public statement about what they feel was police brutality there, and we fully support that, and we will work with them to make sure that they have a safe and visible protest.
But to use that as an excuse to be violent, that is where you would draw the line.
That is where I draw the line, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how we think that it's okay in any sense of the word to be rioting, smashing businesses, hurting people, killing people, and we've had some deaths, assaulting police officers. You can have protests. I absolutely support that. And on this issue with my Facebook post, I absolutely support it. You're right. We have to do a better job in law enforcement, and that starts with people like me. But smashing businesses and looting and burning things and burning churches, burning police stations, assaulting journalists, trying to attack the White House. I mean, this is it's unbelievable. And I really would call on all citizens. I don't care which side of the issue you're on. There is no excuse for this. There would be no excuse for this if people were doing it, protesting the public health order, and there's no excuse for this, people protesting police brutality. This is not effective. We are destroying our own country. And if we want to spend a few minutes, look at what's going on in Hong Kong. And I know we're Americans, so we're not watching a lot of what's going on in Hong Kong, but they've actually got American flags in among the protesters in Hong Kong, and they are being, well, they're about to be completely subjected to the communist system. They're losing all their democratic rights, and there's almost nobody saying anything about it here. But when you watch those folks, there's why you don't need a permit to protest the government here, right?
Right.
You get to protest the government, but you don't in Hong Kong, and you don't in China. And so we really have a great country. We really have a good system. We can make improvements. I absolutely agree with that. But it is not advanced at all by trashing businesses and hurting people.
That old great quote about, I can disagree with your right to say it, but defend your right to say it too.
Which is absolutely where the police
disagree
department
with what
is.
You say.
That's right.
Defend your right to say it.
Absolutely where the police department is. So the flag in the flag in the public health order that was shaped like a Nazi swastika, it was ridiculous. But it goes to the poisoned conversations we're having politically. The President of the United States is not a murderer because he wants to open businesses sooner than the governor thinks. The governor is not a fascist because she wants to keep people on lockdown a little longer to make sure people are safe. And honestly, I saw the emails where People were attacking the mayor for being a murderer because he wanted to open businesses here a little faster than the governor. We were always talking about just a matter of time, right? The businesses were always going to open, so it's always just a matter of time when that was going to happen. But we get into this vitriol of we're either fascists or we're murderers, and the use of the Nazi flag was just ridiculous. The governor is not a fascist. She's doing the best she can. Everybody is. We're doing the best we can from our perspective to make our community and our state safer. So it's that vitriol. We've got to dial it down a little bit. Right now, what you're seeing with all this protesting, that's a good thing. That's a meaningful conversation. When it degenerates into rioting and chaos and calling out the National Guard, there's no conversation. We're not talking about how the police can be better. We're talking about, can we restore order? Can we protect people? So
Right.
that kills the conversation.
Understood. Well, Chief, I appreciate your comments on this, of course. And before we run out of time, I did want to ask you about another case that your department is working on. You've been asking for tips from the community. It's something that we posted over the weekend, of course, to see if we could try to spread the word for you. But it was a sexual assault case in Farmington near downtown, and that's really all that we know. You may know more, but as the case develops, but really no suspects at this point, right?
Not
Looking
at this
for
point.
information.
So anybody that does any information on this case, we're actively working it right now, and we are concerned about it. And anybody that has any tips, like we say in our press release, please call the Farmington Police Department Detective Unit.
Right. Okay. Very good. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate it.
Chief Steve Hebbe, Chief of Police for the Farmington Police Department, my guest here on KSJE. Back with more in just a moment, everyone. The time is 8:40.
Marketplace Tech is supported by Carbonite. Working from home is essential, but it also